B-sides and bonus tracks are typically just unused and leftover songs that didn't make it onto an album, either because they didn't fit, or because there were other songs that were simply better. However, I often find them to be even more interesting than actual album cuts, since they don't really have to meet the expectations of the rest of the album, because they're just added bonuses. They have room to be a little stranger, and maybe a little more experimental, in ways that wouldn't have totally meshed with the rest of the album. Today, I want to look at some of the stranger B-sides and bonus tracks that stick out to me, either because of weird production or lyrics, having an interesting backstory, or for being different from the artist's typical style. Let's get started with Spice Invaders by the Spice Girls. A B-side to the iconic hit single Spice Up Your Life, Spice Invaders is hands down the strangest song in the group's catalog. It's not even necessarily a song, it's more just studio chatter between the girls, set to a whistling, bubblegum pop backing track. It's honestly hilarious, with a lot of great quotes from the girls, especially Mel B, but it's also just strange in how it kinda meanders along, and doesn't really build to anything. It literally is just the girls being silly with each other, which begs the question, why was this even released? Well, apparently, the song was a rush job, since Spice Up Your Life was ready to be released, but didn't have a B-side. The group booked a session with production duo Absolute to make one, though due to the limited time that they had, the duo decided to just give the girls 4 microphones and let them talk about whatever. The backing track was added later on, and the song was finished that very night. It's crazy that the Spice Girls were so massive at the time that they could get away with doing something like this. I've seen people joke that huge artists like Taylor Swift or Adele could put out a voice note and fans would just send it to #1 anyways, but the Spice Girls did essentially that. This was a B-side to one of the biggest hits of the 90s, and it just barely qualifies as a song. To be honest though, the track does embody the let loose silliness and humor of the Spice Girls. They're totally the type of group to release a jokey song like this. So while it's definitely weird as hell, Spice Invaders is a great listen if you're in the mood for a laugh. French Blue by Janet Jackson. A B-side to her 1984 single Fast Girls, French Blue is a dance remix of that song and another song called Pretty Boy, both of which were from her second album Dream Street. The idea of mashing up 2 songs in itself isn't strange, but it's the way French Blue does it that makes it stick out. The whole thing is filled with chopped up and reversed vocals, all set to a semi-erratic, synthy, disco-y beat, giving the whole thing a kind of unnerving vibe. It feels like a bunch of discordant parts smashed into one, and not really coming together cohesively. It gives me the feeling of having taken some sort of illicit substance at a nightclub in the 1980s, and just having a trip on the dance floor. It's creepier than it should be, and the fact that it's just this random B-side to a relatively forgotten about 80s song makes it that much more unsettling. On paper, this is just a fun little dance track, but in execution, it's definitely one of Ms. Jackson's stranger moments. Supernatural by Madonna. A B-side to the 1989 single Cherish, Supernatural is probably the weirdest and most overtly comical track from Madonna's 80s output. The song is a spooky horror-themed track about Madonna essentially having sex with a ghost. Leave it to Madge to come across a wandering spirit just to have it bone her. There are some really ridiculous lines in this, especially the pre-chorus. I've got to be very careful, never know what the neighbors would say, they already think I'm crazy. I wouldn't like to wake up and find myself in the family way, a ghost baby. You know, there's a lot of questions that line raises, but I don't think I want to know the answers to them. My favorite part of the song is the outro, where she just gives up any scrap of subtlety the song might have had. Gotta take off my pants for a different kind of romance. That super duper naturally big thing. It's outrageously large. This bitch really wanted some ghost dick. Honestly, if it was Patrick Swayze, I would've too. A remix of the song was actually included on a compilation album called Red Hot Dance in 1992, which was made to raise money and awareness for those affected by AIDS. Of all the Madonna songs to use, it is so hilarious to me that they picked this one. Like, what compelled them to pick this over bangers like Express Yourself, Into the Groove, or Rescue Me? I guess it was just meant to be a moment of levity. While Madge definitely has her fair share of jokey, almost novelty songs, this one stands out to me, as it really is the earliest example of her doing something like this. Favorite Song and Future Shock by the Sugar Babes. I could not for the life of me pick which one of these songs was weirder, so I'm just gonna go with both. Favorite song was a B-side to the Sugababes' legendary hit Push the Button, while Future Shock was a B-side to the single Ugly, both of which came from their fourth album, Taller in More Ways. And can I just say, for as much as I adore that album, it has some of the absolute worst B-sides of the Babes' discography, mainly these two. Favorite song feels like two tracks that have nothing to do with each other, jammed into one, and it doesn't really work in my opinion. The chorus is this catchy rock headbanger, which is actually really good, but the verses switch it up into this empty, underproduced nothingness with a melody that sounds like they're making it up on the spot. If you listen to it, you'll get what I mean. It just sounds unfinished, like it's the concept of a song that wasn't fully fleshed out. It also never sounded right to me from a technical standpoint. Like, I'm not super knowledgeable about that side of music, but something is just off with the way the song is mastered. It sounds more like a demo than a finished product. Favorite song isn't weird strictly because it's two different songs in one. Both the Babes and Girls Aloud have a lot of tracks like that, especially when they worked with Xenomania. I just think it really didn't work in this case, making for a truly bizarre listen. Meanwhile, Future Shock sounds like a proto-hyperpop song with its clanky robotic production and lyrics about dancing the night away. This one is definitely more cohesive than Favorite Song, but it still feels kind of half-baked to me. The futuristic, alien-like vibe it has going on is charming, but I just don't find the song to be particularly catchy or all that memorable. I feel like they should have leaned a little harder into the campiness, maybe adding some sci-fi sound effects in the background, or having a techno breakdown for the bridge. I don't know, something that would make it stand out more. There's also a rap verse from the producer of the song, Lucas Second, who makes so little impact I literally always forget he's on it until his part comes on. I don't think Future Shock is necessarily a bad song, just a weird, underdeveloped one. It has potential to be a good dance track, but it never really gets there in my opinion. Either way, both these B-sides are among the Babes' stranger cuts. Flirt and We Went As Far As We Felt Like Going by the Pussycat Dolls. No, I didn't plan to have so many girl groups in this video, it's just kind of how it happened. And like the last entry, I couldn't decide which one I thought was stranger, so I put both here. Flirt was an international bonus track on the group's debut album, PCD, and it's unlike anything in the rest of their discography, being a supercharged rock track. It definitely doesn't fit in with the rest of the album, which is mainly pop, R&B, and hip-hop, and instead sounds inspired by the pop rock music that was big in the mid-2000s. And as a pop rock lover myself, I really enjoy Flirt. It's so different from what they usually do, but they pull it off, especially with Nicole's aggressive and confrontational performance. It's just funny to me that they have a song like this, since they never really delved into rock either before or after this. I remember playing it for one of my friends, and he said it sounded like something you'd hear in a Sonic the Hedgehog game, and honestly, I can almost see that. I personally would love to go speeding through levels with the Pussycat Dolls blaring in the background. Now, as for We Went As Far As We Felt Like Going, this was actually the first song ever recorded by the group. At the very least, it was one of the earliest, as Kaya Jones is on the track. And for those who don't know, Kaya was hired in 2003, along with Nicole and Melody, to be a part of the group's major label debut, but she ended up leaving in September 2004, a year before the album came out. That makes the song one of the very few they ever recorded to feature her vocals. The track is a cover of the LaBelle song Far As We Felt Like Going, and also samples the SOS Band's classic Take Your Time, Do It Right. It was included on the soundtrack of one of the most prestigious films of the 2000s, Shark Tale, which also included Car Wash by Christina Aguilera and Missy Elliott. Gay history right there. It later got added to the UK and Ireland editions of PCD as a bonus track, and streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music now have it as the last track on the album. It actually fits pretty well in PCD, since that album had a lot of covers and samples of disco classics. This song may be more interesting for its backstory, as opposed to its actual content, but the actual content itself is also kind of weird to me. It's another one that doesn't really sound finished, like it's missing some production element that would have set it over the top. Again, it just feels half-baked. It's a good song, but among one of their weaker ones in my opinion. Still, it's an interesting part of their history, as it's the very first song released under the Pussycat Dolls name, after they had been a burlesque troupe since 1995. Humble beginnings for sure. That does it for this video, but let me know some other weird B-sides and bonus tracks that stick out to you in the comments, and I'll see you next time.